I'm Helen Van Noorden from Girton College, Cambridge, on research leave at AIAS, the Aarhus Institute of Advanced Studies. I work on ancient Greek and Latin literature. I'm especially interested in how archaic epic poetry is adapted in different genres emerging in antiquity. At AIAS, I'm working on a book about an intense but still understudied example of how the material and form of Greek epic poetry is adapted for a new genre. This genre is that of the Sibylline Oracles, which are prophecies in Greek verse attributed to the legendary Sibyl. Already by the 5th century BCE, we find mention of the Sibyl as an inspired prophetess. Over time, sites all over the Mediterranean claimed association with the Sibyl. This map shows the extent of this in the Roman world. Christian writers attributed messianic wisdom to specific Sibyls, whose subsequent cultural impact we see reflected in monumental Renaissance art. In Rome itself, there was a closely guarded collection of Sibylline prophecies, consulted by Roman officials for advice at times of crisis. However, most of the surviving Sibylline oracles, in 12 books and some fragments, are not from the Roman state collection, but represent a Judeo-Christian tradition of apocalyptic writing distinct from it, and sometimes very anti-Roman. This slide outlines the evolution of the collection we have today, although in practice its stages can't be distinguished so clearly. The earliest oracles in what is now Book 3 were probably composed in the 2nd century BCE in Egypt, the centre of Greek literary production after the conquests of Alexander the Great. Jewish Greek literature in several genres flourished in this period. But the Sibylline collection we have is the end of a process of composing, updating, and compiling over several centuries beyond that by anonymous Jewish and then Christian editors. In this work, various geographical claims to a Sibyl are incorporated in the presentation of this prophetess as very ancient indeed. At 2 points, she is said to be closely related to Noah, who predated the biblical flood and subsequent divisions of Jews and Gentiles. This Sibylline voice, therefore, besides being divinely inspired, has multicultural authority and a perspective in which most of history is in the future. The trademark of literary Sibylline oracles is a big picture view of the course of human history. They adapt the concept presented by the Greek archaic poet Hesiod of a sequence of metallic human races or ages. Another important source is the biblical book of Daniel, in which Daniel interprets a dream of a statue of different metals as a prophecy of world empires eventually to be overthrown by the kingdom of God. This Sibylline genre blends versions of Greek myths with scriptural material in epic phrases. It combines moral exhortations with eschatology, that is, descriptions of the eschaton or end of history, when God will deal out final reward and punishment. Within this grand sweep, Sibylline predictions of wars between East and West, and environmental upheavals and plagues also reflect more recent ancient history, recast as prophecy. For example, in Book 4, the Sibyl elusively predicts the eruption of Vesuvius in 79 CE and interprets it as divine punishment on the Romans for destroying the Jerusalem temple, which happened in 70 CE. However, the references are vaguely expressed in order to be reusable, and pinning them down doesn't prove anything about the composition date of any verses beyond the allusion itself. So this collection needs also to be evaluated as a whole tradition of writing. It requires framing and cultural contexts that likewise span several centuries and religious identities. Most obviously, the Sibylline Oracles should be compared with other oracle collections from the classical period through to late antiquity. And as pseudepigraphic utterances, that is, fictionally attributed to a famous figure, These Sibylline productions resemble collections of wisdom that are credited to figures such as Orpheus or Enoch or Solomon. Central to my project is the point that the prophecies are presented in Greek hexameters, the rhythm of epic, of which Homer is the first and most famous author figure. The Sibylline Oracles actually fill a gap in our history of Greek hexameter poetry between the 3rd century BCE and the later Roman Empire. They participate in wider practices of rewriting Greek myths for philosophical or political aims, and their techniques bear comparison with late antique Christian paraphrases of biblical stories in Homeric hexameters. One specific feature I'm investigating is wordplay, which is used in the Sibylline Oracles to demonstrate oracular knowledge. For example, puns on city names to point to their destiny. These and other types of verbal dexterity focus my questions about the balance of oral and written discourses in this literature. Another interesting dimension is the Sibylline catalogue. The Sibylline Oracles present a compilation of material in many styles, but incorporating lists of events or place names, besides being evidently updatable, is also a demonstration of poetic prowess with its own tradition in antiquity. I plan to include in my monograph a new translation of the core sections of the Sibylline Oracles to make this research more accessible. I hope that this study will help to increase awareness of less well-known ancient Greek literature and dig into its wider issues of authorship and multicultural identity. For me, this collection is also a gateway to further collaborative study of apocalyptic discourse in antiquity. I'm grateful to Aarhus University and the European Union's Horizon 2020 programme for funding this research, and thanks to you for watching.